And then we will light this candle. Oh, looks like we're recording. Okay. All right. You gents ready? YouTube, you ready? And we're just going to record our opens here, too. So this will be a live-to-tape show, hopefully. All right, here we go. This is the Marginal Gains podcast, the show that makes a big deal about the little things and how those little things can be a big deal. We are, of course, presented by Silca. Heritage pumps, wax chains, aero socks, 3D printed tools, just some of what that company is up to.
I'm Eldon Nelson, also known as Fatty. Marginal Gains is supported by Shimano. Shimano's best known for making the finest drivetrains and brakes, but it doesn't stop there. Shimano also has a helmet company. Not just any helmet company, Shimano is proudly aligned with Laser helmets. Why Laser? Because it is focused. Of course, unlike many other helmet companies, Laser's line is bike only. Protecting cyclists is Laser's business, and if you go by Virginia Tech safety testing, and I don't know where you would go, but please do. Go visit. I'm sure they'd love to have company. No company does it better than Laser. If you need a new helmet, check out Laser at lasersport.us.
And we're going to talk more about Shimano as this show progresses, so fear not, Shimano's in the works here too, thanks to our guest and this little project he's been working on. This is episode 94, by the way, of Marginal Gains, and the first of two shows we are doing on marginal gains and the brutal test that is the Unbound 200 gravel race. Now, you may have heard of this beast, 200 miles and change through the rolling Flint Hills of Kansas. It starts and ends in Emporia. The race has featured heat, cold, wind, rain, mud, sometimes all in one day. The event has broken wheels, chains, frames, hearts, and minds over its 17 years.
Yeah, Silca TV followers are likely aware that Silca's own Travis Verhoff has dared to take on Unbound, and he's been documenting his preparation on Silca's YouTube channel. As we record, the event is about a month away, so we thought, let's get Travis on, have him detail his prep with a focus on marginal gains, of course, and then get him to commit to a goal or time, and then have him come back after and talk about how it all worked out. Travis, how do you like that? Welcome to Marginal Gains.
Well, happy to be here. Yeah, it sounds like a plan to me.
Well, we don't mean to freak you out or anything. That's what we do on our other show. But welcome again to the show. And, God, it's a pleasure to have you on. I'm surprised we haven't had you on already, but this seemed like a great excuse. Why don't you tell folks, first of all, we know we see you doing some of the Ask the Expert segments on the YouTube channel, but what exactly do you do at Silca?
Yeah, so my role here is as the e-commerce manager, so responsible for all things direct to consumer. So that's why you see me on a lot of the content we do and things like that. I write a lot of the blogs and generally website maintenance and all things direct to consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So, Travis, has anyone ever told you that you both look and sound a lot like Josh?
Are you hanging out in the YouTube comment sections?
I'm not. No, this is just an impression that I'm getting in real time.
Yeah, no, I think almost every video I do, I get some sort of comment in the comment section of like, okay, so this has got to be Josh's son, or this is Josh's nephew, at least for sure. But for the record,
Josh
we
Jr.
are not related. Yeah.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about how the bike entered your life.
Yeah, actually, pretty timely. So I joined a fraternity when I was at IU and went to the Little 500 for the first time, and it was like 40 degrees and pouring down rain all day. And maybe it's a little bit of foreshadowing. I saw that and thought, that's something I need to be doing. I was in the stands just watching, and our team was pretty bad. And I thought, well, this is a place I can help out. And lo and behold, later that summer, I was on a bike and training for that also kind of wild and wacky event. But it was just this past weekend, so timely topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now tell us about the Unbound project a little bit. Did Josh pressure you into Unbound, and is your salary tied to your success there?
Ooh,
yeah,
a percentage, some sort of commission.
I don't get to come back. Yeah, no, it was.
What was it? Is this your first Unbound? Let's start with that, actually.
Yeah. So this will be my first time riding in it. I went last year. We had a booth and got to do a little riding around Emporia and stuff, and actually sagged for a friend that was out on course and helped out a couple of our athletes while I was out there. Worked out well. He was quite a bit further back than the pros, so I could go help out. Spent some time in Alexi Vermeulen's pit and Adam Roberge, so helped those guys, and then would sag for him. And I wrote a blog post kind of about why I was doing this, and I had this picture that was on my phone at the time. I had no idea who it was, and I just remember thinking, man, this event is really cool. I don't know why people are doing this. This is like objectively dumb, and I'm here for it, right? And then somebody came through and I was just trying to take pictures of how epic the conditions were. It was muddy and gross, and, everybody was covered head to toe, and just happened to take a picture and got a perfect one. Somebody just a big bright smile, and I thought, all right, I'm doing this thing. If we're 160 miles in coming into the SAG, and if they're having this much fun at that point, yeah, I definitely need to be on the start line next year. And it took me a little while of going through the pictures and stuff, and turned out it was Iz King. So one of the lifetime athletes on the women's side. So
yes.
Shout out to her for getting me inspired to get out there.
Awesome. The woman in orange. That's Isabel King. Yeah. We all know her. And what other kind of racing have you done?
So I did a little bit of crit racing in college, and a couple years after I graduated college, I got fairly heavy into the just kind of local crit scene, racing 25, 30 days a year in the summer, and then did a lot of velodrome stuff here in Indianapolis. So we're lucky enough to have a velodrome about 10 minutes up the road, and Thursday nights at Major Taylor Velodrome, and race 3 times a night. That's my kind of racing. So
right.
I love velodrome racing. I've never done it, but I used to go to the Marymore Velodrome in Seattle, actually in Sammamish, Washington, and just watch that every Friday night. Loved it. It is not very much like gravel racing. So what have you done on dirt?
So we have a race here in Indianapolis called the Dust Bowl 100. I did that last year. That was a sufferfest for me. I did the Mid-South gravel earlier this year, and I did Barry-Roubaix about a year and a half ago when they held it in October. So, yep,
how have those gone?
Just a little bit. So Barry-Roubaix my son was 6 months old at the time. I don't think I had ridden more than 30 miles at a time. And I remember turning to another guy about 35 miles in, and we're in some little group together, and I'm eating a gel, and he's like, "You hurting?" I said, "Oh, something bad is about to happen. I just don't know if it's 5 minutes from now or 30 minutes from now, but I am gonna explode."
So crit racer, track racer primarily, which means your training has taken a left turn to get ready for this thing. So tell us about getting ready for Unbound, about what type of training you've had to do based on your previous experience, like how you've had to change your body, and what kind of rides you've been putting in.
Yeah, so really and to kind of step back from that a little bit, part of why I thought this might be an interesting project, or why anybody might care that I put it on video or documented it. I'd gotten pretty fit over the pandemic. I got done with work and had nothing else to do, so I was riding my bike a lot. Then I got COVID. I was off the bike for 3 months. About 2 weeks later, after I started riding again, my son was born, and we didn't sleep for 10 months. So, needless to say, my fitness was in the tank. So, I thought that might be kind of fun to document the rebuild or trying to figure out how to ride a bike again. So I'm pretty much starting from scratch. So yeah, a lot of my training in the past has been going to group rides, trying to do a lot of high intensity, very little, we'll say zone 2 and endurance based stuff. So, at least not the focus. So really it's been as much as I can at 5 a.m. on the trainer, putting in as many hours as I can between, I think Josh did say, yeah, we can document it, but you don't get any extra time off for it. So,
Thanks, Josh.
I'm trying to figure out how I can ride an hour and a half or 2 hours before work in the morning or in the evening. So it's been a lot of trying to figure that out around the plague that my son in daycare seems to bring home every couple weeks. So,
so you really are living a normal citizen class racer's life, right? You've got a day job, you've got a family, and you have got a big aspiration for an incredibly challenging race. I don't know, Hottie, if you are aware of any racing of the Unbound that has gone pleasantly with great weather and a tailwind the whole day, right?
No way.
It just doesn't happen. This is a super hard race. So how are you feeling about, I mean, when you picture the day, how are you feeling about how you're going to do at it?
Nervously optimistic, I think is a good descriptor. I think I did Mid-South earlier in the year. Really fun event, and we were there for the expo, and I thought, this might not be a bad test where I'm at in March. So I pulled my typical, went out way too hard, and I think I looked down about an hour and a half or 2 hours in, and I was at, I don't know, 85 or 90% of my threshold. I'm like, oh, this is gonna hurt. So as long as I can kind of dial that back and be smart, easier said than done, I think. I think I got a pretty good shot at it. So
right. And Dylan Johnson has been one of your, on the fitness side, one of your marginal gain gurus for that type of thing. And I imagine he's talked to you about, we've talked to him for our other show about pacing. He has some great thoughts about pacing and about how to establish a pace at Unbound and hold it for all day and to meet your goal. So he's been your guy, right, for that stuff?
Yeah, so actually, kind of comically, I sent him the screenshot of my training peaks hour by hour, and my normalized was just dropping and dropping and dropping all day. It's like, is this what you mean by negative pacing? He said, absolutely not. You cannot do that at Unbound. I think my comment was, yeah, I'm not really scared of a 100-mile race. I'll figure it out. It might hurt, but I'm pretty scared of a 200-mile race. So we'll be smarter then. So yeah,
right.
he's kind of given me some advice on being able to set a limit, and I think that's going to be my goal. As that's a little bit in flux right now, as we're still 4 or 5 weeks out from the event. So as I get maybe 2 weeks out, I'm going on what I'm calling a training camp. My wife is calling family vacation. About 2 weeks out from Unbound. So I think at the end of that, I'll have a pretty good idea of what that limit's going to be.
Right. Okay. Well, of course, this is the Marginal Gains podcast. We're really going to get into how you've set yourself up hopefully for success here. And lucky you have access to one of the great minds in Marginal Gains, and Josh Portner, our friend and your founder, Silca's founder, or Silca's CEO, I should say, not founder. So we're hoping you tapped into that brain a little bit, and I'm sure he shared what he could with you. So let's get into your bike setup in detail here. I know you're riding the Factor Austro Gravel, unless that bike got suddenly crashed or stolen, but the last I looked, that was the bike you were going to go with. It clears 45s. It's decked out with Shimano GRX Di2. So those are the basics of the bike. So let's focus on gearing, first of all, and that Shimano setup. Is it 1x or 2x, and why?
2x. I am a big proponent of 2x. I have 1x on the mountain bike, and that's about it. I really like.
Why a big proponent? I think that's worth going into.
Yeah, I think I have never heard anybody make a good argument, an argument that I think is good for 1x. I think Shimano does such a good job with the front shifting that, I think that's a non-issue to me. I can probably count on one hand the number of times I've dropped a chain. I shouldn't have said that, because I can pretty much guarantee I'm going to drop a chain at Unbound now. I think the gear ratios have a lot smaller jumps between, so you don't get stuck in those weird, little too hard or a little too easy gearing ratios, and the range is just so wide, so you can get kind of best of both worlds. I'm running what I think Shimano probably doesn't like to hear, but the GRX actually have both the 1x and 2x rear derailleur. I bought both of them because the 1x says it'll go to 42, and I was kind of curious if it would work with 2x. The 2x works a little bit better with 2x. It's rated to 1134, but I have a 1140 XT cassette, so running a 4831 up front and an 1140 in the rear. So everything from a 4811, pretty bigger gear than I'll need, and then a 3140 kind of bailout gear for when things go sideways.
Yeah. Officially, Shimano specs that derailleur with a 34, and I think it's one of those things, right? If they could say, well, if you are an experienced rider who knows chain line very well and knows to stay out of the big scenario, we're okay with that 1140. But they really can't say that, right? They have to blanket it for all people, and in which case, okay, it's 1134. That's probably just the best way for them to go. And with the 2x, right? I mean, Josh has talked about this a lot as well, that 1x's terrific if you're a trail mountain biker, but if you're really concerned about efficiency, like how smoothly your chain is rolling around those cogs and those rings, 2x is it.
Yeah, you can spend a lot more time in the 48, in the middle of the cassette rather than, down in the, if you're, I think the difference, we've gone into this a few different times, and, the 11 versus 10 tooth that, some of the other group sets come with is something like a 6-watt penalty if you're down there. So if I was running a 40 chain ring up front to be able to get some more range in the rear, and probably spend a lot more time in that, 14, 12, 11 cassette, so or sprocket. So being able to have a little bit better chain line and spend more time in the middle of the cassette, definitely a big marginal gain there.
Yep. A big marginal gain. I do like that saying. We're going to start using that. That's a big marginal gain.
At which point it stops being marginal at all.
It might be true. On the line of marginal versus maximal?
Our other podcast, Maximal Gains.
Yeah, Maximal Gains.
Awesome. So, of course, the other important component in your drivetrain is the chain. So tell us what your chain lube strategy is. We care about that deeply here.
Yeah, so I think hopefully it's a nice dry day. And then cross your fingers. At that point, I think I'm going to run Hot Wax X. So it's our graphene infused chain wax. And in some conditions, we can see up to 800K in a single application. That won't be an Unbound because it's got a lot of dust and dirt and stuff in there. But I think it should, assuming it's a dry day, get through the 200 miles without any problem. So I'll have Synergetic at the sag stations, be able to drop on should I need it if it's pouring down rain or who knows what kind of craziness you run to over 200 miles. So that'll be the top up if that's needed.
Yeah. The discussion over the longevity of hot wax, there used to be a lot more concern over it. It's not so much anymore based on races like Unbound. I mean, plenty of athletes have been there, and we've seen hot waxes certainly make it through Roubaix. You'll see much of the peloton on hot wax there, and those are two extreme events, I should say. Yeah, the only doubt that might creep into your mind and the minds of any athlete who runs hot wax is if you get an extreme weather event, whether the weather is so bad, like you wake up race morning at Unbound and it's been drenching all night, and you know, okay, this is going to be a mud fest. Do you have a backup plan just in case that is, like maybe just go out with a Synergetic lubed chain from the get-go, or you're just going to go ahead and give the wax a go? I'm talking about if you get an extreme day.
Yeah, if it's like last year, and I don't know if you can get a nastier day, then I'm sure you can, but, you know.
You can. 2015.
Yeah.
2015
Yeah, I
was a
gonna
nastier
say,
year.
Ask Yuri Housewall about that.
Yeah, so I think I'll quote Adam Kieran over at Zero Friction that I think it's block 6 or whatever that is their wet, nasty, block that they do. They spray it with sandy, dirty water. If I remember right, Secret Chain Blend beat any other lubricant that's ever tested still to this day, because he hasn't tested Hot Wax X yet. It's more efficient. It doesn't really matter that it's wet. The problem is then when you run out of wax, you need to add more lubricant. So
Right.
If it's that nasty, I probably won't leave the Synergetic in the sag stop. I'll probably put it in a jersey pocket or some kind of either hydration pack or top two bag, something like that. So the one big consideration I'd make for that, I actually saw, I didn't even know this existed until Unbound last year. Adam Roberge had one of those pressure washers in his pit that is battery operated, like a battery operated drill, and has a hose that comes out of it to a water source. So if it's that nasty, I'm going to be picking one of those up on the way to Emporia and pressure wash the drivetrain at the sags.
Yeah. And then the only issue with Synergetic, and we talked about this with Josh before, is for a pit lube where you're trying to move quickly, the Synergetic has that needle applicator. And so what we do for Fatty at Leadville is we put Synergetic in an old NFS bottle, which is a little messier, right? I mean, the whole point of Synergetic is you don't have to use as much because of that little needle applicator. But in times when you need speed, right, you probably want it in a bottle that dispenses things a little quicker, and you're just going to have to deal with kind of the messiness of the situation. So that's a little fatty hottie tip there.
Yeah.
Yeah, luckily Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, also, I have snapped the needle off of a bottle of Synergetic accidentally before and discovered that, wow, now you've got, Synergetic, will just come gushing out.
Yeah.
And which is not a bad approach for if you have a super bad weather event day out there. Just, it's going to make a little bit of a mess in your jersey, but, that's going to be the least of your mess problems, frankly.
Yeah. Luckily, we bottle all that in-house, so I can snag a super secret top and throw that on the bottle, and we'll be all set.
There you go.
So I did that last year, too. So I think I probably went through half of a bottle of Synergetic in 4 chain lubes because I was just spraying it and trying to wipe it off so that they could get going faster.
I'm assuming you ran hot wax at Mid-South. That was, it was dusty. It was somewhat muddy there, right? Did you make it through the whole race there?
Oh yeah, it was not a concern. Yeah, I don't remember there was a little bit of mud, but it really wasn't, especially for Mid-South standards, it was fine. So, bike was dirty, but that was about it.
By the way, for the folks who haven't used the new, it's called X, right? The new Hot Wax X is what you folks are calling it. Is there any difference in chain prep or getting it on the chain? Is it all pretty much the same?
Yeah, no, it's same process. It's just a different blend of wax with graphene additive. So it's kind of a magic material where it's got I'll steal Josh's word, most lubricious, substance that we know of. So adding that in there not only makes it more efficient, but there's some a little bit of a different wax blend that even helps make it last longer too.
Okay.
While we're on the topic of carrying lube, what else do you carry just as for field repair type stuff, and what do you carry it in?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we did kind of to prepare for this and kind of help Dylan Johnson out the beginning of the year is we went to the wind tunnel and tested different places to store things. We have a Matone seat pack, and that's probably what I'll carry my spares in. That was more or less a wash aerodynamically, so sits really nice and tight up against the saddle. I think it was maybe half a watt or something like that, but very, very small penalty. I have 2 Tubolito tubes in there. I have some Tubolitos in some of the Pirelli ones, so they fold up really nice. So I can actually fit 2 gravel tubes, 2 CO2s, tire levers, one of our Venti multi-tools, and a gear wipe in there for good measure. So.
And I think I saw you had bar plugs, or rather tire plugs, in your the ends of your bars, correct? A little quick Dynaplug.
Yeah, actually, I forgot about those. Dynaplug makes a bar end tire repair tool that threads into the bar end, and so you can unthread it real quick, plug a tire if you need to. I actually have another Dynaplug that I'll probably put in my jersey pocket for quick access. I'll also run a top tube bag. The one I have right now that I really like is the Oru case. It has a kind of magnetic zipper top, so it's really easy to get in and out of. You don't have to mess with the zipper and all that kind of stuff. So I might keep it in there. We'll see how many gels I have jammed in there.
Is that where you keep your food as opposed to in the jersey pocket or elsewhere?
Yeah, so I'll probably one of the things that I really like on the nutrition side is the untapped maple. I think it tastes really good. They have a few different flavors, but one of the things that I think they do really well is the packets are so small that they fit in top tube bags. I've used a lot of SIS gels too, which I like, but I think I can fit 3, maybe 4 of those, and I can fit like 8 of the untapped gels in there. So purely from a storage perspective, it's easier to run the untapped stuff than it is SIS.
Let's look at wheels and tires, a biggie with marginal gainers, and certainly at Unbound. So what do we got there?
I am running the GRX, their new carbon wheel set. It's got a 25 mil internal, so nice and wide, and the Pirelli Cinturado H's. They're kind of fast rolling tire in a 45. So blown out on the rim, they measure about 46, which is right at the limit of what the frame is going to clear. We're pretty close on the rear derailleur, or in the front derailleur in the rear tire. So if it is muddy, I'll definitely switch to a 40 in the rear to add a little more mud clearance. But if it's dry, then no need to. Right.
I guess your other choice with Pirelli would have been to go with their race, correct? Which is, I spent some time in their booth at Sea Auto trying to sort out how they lay out their line of tires, and I think the race is less knob, correct? Maybe a little faster rolling.
They have a GS, I think, or maybe I'm mistaking that with another brand. So I'll say none of this is sponsored. So I know I had Nat Ross on to talk tires, and I actually asked them to come on board to talk on the podcast, or on the YouTube series, really because I thought they made a really good tire that was fast rolling, had a pretty decent puncture protection, and the one thing that I was really interested in was they had a 35, a 40, and a 45 mil tire, of the same tread pattern, same everything, because I knew I wanted to go test and see. And I thought that 5 mil jump each time was a good jump to see which size tire was the fastest.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, they have another tire. I have a set of 40 M's, which is their mixed terrain tire, has a little bit more tread, and then the H's are really, really low, really, really low tread, and then they have another one that I'm not as familiar with, but I know they're rolling that out kind of as a race tire.
Yeah, and I think at Unbound, I mean, having lots of knob is proving to be less ideal there, like not as optimized as you could nearly run a slick at the place, because the cornering just doesn't come into play there, and you're not trying to grab trail like you are at a mountain bike race. So you really want to just be ripping along as best you can. Even if it gets muddy, I mean, if it gets muddy, a knob is still going to get clogged up and slow you down, and again, just you're not optimized there. Okay, so walk us through PSI, how you got there. I know you had Robert Chung on, so tell us what kind of pressure you're at or nearly at, and how you worked at optimizing that.
Yeah, so I think tire pressure. How do you know you're at a gravel race? Somebody starts asking me about what tire pressure you're running. I think I'm going to be somewhere in the 26 to 30 PSI range. If I had to pick today without going and testing on the course, I'd probably run 27 in the front, 28 in the rear. Maybe 26 and 27. I am going to run Vittoria inserts. That's one thing I don't normally do. But just for all the extra protection and run flat and all that I can get, rock strikes and things that, the big flint rocks that everybody talks about. So, I've heard some horror stories about cattle grates too. So, but with that, you can kind of drop the pressure a little bit. That's going to be like, category 3 gravel on our tire pressure calculator. That's kind of where it spits out. So my plan is to get to Unbound, to get to Emporia a little bit early and do some rolling resistance testing, do some Chung method stuff out on course, and try to get a course specific tire pressure that's fastest. But just as a general rule of thumb, I would much rather be a pound or two low than a pound or two high. So if there's a question, I'll probably err on the side of letting an extra pound out.
Okay.
I think it's worth hearing the real world, how you are planning to use the Chung method out there. It's, I mean, we've talked about it before, but honestly, it is something that I would love to hear as you are prepping for a race event on a course. How do you use the Chung method and do it in the amount of time that you have, which is not a lot. Obviously, you've got family and, a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So the Chung method is really interesting. I think, part of the reason I wanted to bring him on to talk about testing was that, even as much as I hear about it, talk about it, it's still I have a question about this, or what course do I need, that kind of thing. So I thought it'd be really interesting to bring him on. The nice part is that there's multiple protocols, and he explains that, throughout our episode of where you can use different one's not necessarily better than the other, and you can get just about the same accuracy. It doesn't matter which way you go. It just matters which type of course you can find. The 2 to 3K loop that we were kind of aiming for on gravel is almost impossible, right? They don't have gravel roads in the middle of the city where there's a nice 2K loop. The gravel roads are 3 miles this way and 5 miles that way, and so really hard to, especially if you're going after rolling resistance, it's really hard to get that loop. So the aero testing stuff, it doesn't matter, right? Because you can do it on whatever surface, you're holding that as a constant, as long as the surface stays the same. So there's a couple different protocols, kind of his protocols, that 2 to 3K loop, you want probably 10 meters or so of elevation gain. And the really neat part, I think, for all the marginal gainers out there that find this stuff as interesting as I do, is that the math works out. Why it works is aerodynamics is exponential and rolling resistance is linear. And as long as you have a good power meter and a speed sensor, then they can the program Golden Cheetah will figure out what is aero and what is rolling resistance, and actually get you really close in their estimator. And then all you have to do is play with the graph a little bit to line up the virtual elevation and actual elevation. So there's a 2 to 3K loop. There's an out and back that you can do, and then even a single direction climb. That one's a little bit more difficult because you have to pull, you have to kind of run some numbers outside of Golden Cheetah. But and really what you're in the single direction climb, you want to vary speed. So go up pretty hard, kind of a medium pace, and really slow. And what that does is helps pull out what's aero and what's rolling resistance. So same thing with any of his methods. Varying your speed, your power output is important. You want to do that. So the old school kind of, I'm going to ride this 1K stretch of road at the same power and then make a change and do it at the same power. It's really hard to replicate that exactly, because do you get started at the same pace? Do you have a lull in the middle? That all affects, the average might be the same, but it might not be the same run.
Mm-hmm. So do you plan to do a point-to-point in Emporia to suss out your final tire pressure?
Yeah, I think my goal is going to be to do an out and back. Is probably the most likely that I'll be able to find.
Mm-hmm.
I did find a short loop out there. They have enough gravel that I think I'm going to have to go scout out that course when I see it to see if I'm cutting through some farmer's land or something. But I'm not trying to get in trouble to go figure out if I need to put 1 or 2 more PSI in my tire or less. So the most likely is going to be, a K out and K back and really just do that 3 or 4 times, change pressures, do that 3 or 4 times, change pressures, and go back to the Airbnb and put it into Golden Cheetah, and we'll have a result. So
awesome. Well, we look forward to hearing the follow-up to that once you get done with the race. I also found it interesting that the Chung method also has a roll-down test. I didn't know that. I thought that was only Jan Heine and those folks, but they have a roll-down test too, that if you don't have a power meter, but you need the speed sensor still, could be quite effective as well. Now, again, you're in Emporia, so flatland, probably not a lot of roll-down tests.
Yeah, you can do that pretty well. At least for I haven't done the roll-down test, but like Robert said, well, we know the power is 0. So now we're measuring the linear of rolling resistance, and anything exponential, we know that the power was 0. So the math actually gets pretty easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Easy for him.
Yeah. But tell folks, had you used the Chung method much before this project?
No, I haven't. I've done some of the hold your power constant and do that stuff, but I hadn't done a lot of Chung testing. Really, just from I didn't have a good application to use it for, and time. So, but with an event like this, all right, I'm going to go figure out what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So for the folks who have not used it or have thought about using it, what was the learning curve there?
Really not much. After kind of talking with him, not everybody gets that opportunity, even though he is super generous with his time. Being able to find a course, and then I think the biggest learning curve for me was kind of coming to grips with the fact that I could and should vary my power output. So, and kind of in his words, the more variance, the better, because it makes more points. So, I kind of got stuck on it needed to be a longer course. Said, more laps is probably better than a longer course. And really, if you're taking a data point once a second and you're going 8 minutes, let the mathematicians out there do that quick math, but that's an awful lot of data points to come up with. Like, you don't need to ride for 30 minutes, and that honestly that probably throws your data off, because there's no way you're holding the same position without moving for 30 minutes.
Yeah, folks, I would strongly recommend Travis's interview with Robert Chung. It was great. It's great to see him on camera, and you guys had a great talk about what you can get done with the Chung method and some of the nuances to it as well. That great insight. So you don't even have to talk to Robert Chung. You just go to Silca's YouTube channel, and there's a great interview with the great Mr. Chung right there. Speaking of Chung method, we know that the Chung method could get at aero advantage as well. We're going to get into your wind tunnel testing too in a second, but Unbound has this new aero bar rule. It's only for the pros though. So citizen racers are allowed to use aero bars. What are you going to do, Travis?
Aero bars.
Aero bars.
No question about it. Yep.
Yeah.
I would have been astonished if not, right?
Yeah. I kind of go back and forth on this a little bit in my own head of I don't like mass start races having aero bars. I heard some stuff about the front of the pro race last year that was kind of astonishing to me, that there's that whole spirit of gravel debate that seems to be going on, and partly in my mind that's like, I'm not getting in the aero bars in the middle of a group because that's dangerous. I'm not trying to hurt people out here. So for me, I can guarantee that nobody's going to see me out there in aero bars in the middle of a group and doing dangerous stuff. But I can also promise that I'll probably be by myself for an awful long time. So if I'm going to be by myself that long, I want every bit of wind advantage and other arm position. I find it a lot more comfortable than riding kind of the arrow hoods or one of the other more aggressive positions. So
yeah, it's a meaningful advantage, no question.
Yeah.
I really want to get to the wind tunnel testing just because it's something I personally have always wanted to experience for myself. Never been in a wind tunnel. Was this your first time in a wind tunnel?
Yeah. So it's I gotta say, this was kind of like I designed all of the testing that we were doing and what we were what we wanted to go look at, and it was kind of like bringing a kid to a candy shop, right? All right, you get a day in the wind tunnel. What do you want to test? All right,
what don't I want to test?
Yeah, what ridiculous thing have I never seen somebody else test that I want to know what's faster? So it was a really cool opportunity to do that. But so it was my first time in there. But luckily we had obviously Josh with us, and then Graham, the head engineer over at Factor, came. And I think between them they had 40-something years of experience in the wind tunnel. So while I might have decided what we were testing, there was an awful lot of like, no, don't do it like that. So
you're wanting to try everything. They're rolling their eyes. They're like, oh yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah.
So what did you learn?
I think we were talking a little bit before we hit record. It depends. The number of times I would put something on the bike and I would turn to Josh and say, well, what's this going to do? And he's like, I don't know. Could be really good. Could be really bad. Not sure. Some of the stuff, I think one of the things that was the most surprising to me was putting a bottle in the back jersey pocket. I kind of thought maybe that would be one of the least penalizing ways to carry water. It was actually, I'm trying to remember now, the second best thing that we tested all day, as far as an advantage, outside of body position. So I want to say at 50K, it was a 10 watt advantage for Dylan to have the bottle in his jersey pocket.
Amazing.
Yeah, I would have never guessed in a million years that would be a really big advantage, let alone not a detriment. So yeah, some of that stuff is really hard. We had a like bike packing bag that we had been kind of playing around with. We kind of put it on as a joke, like, man, this is going to be terrible. And
you mean a handlebar bag, that kind of bag?
No, it was like a big roll top saddle bag.
Okay, yeah.
We did do the handlebar bag too. But the bike packing bag was also a positive, and it almost kind of came up as like a fairing in the back. And kind of the running theory was that the air coming over his back had another place to reattach to, so it wasn't as turbulent. Can guarantee you nobody saw that one coming. So it depends is not a cop-out answer.
Yeah. So when you say the water bottle in the back middle jersey pocket was second best, and you mean second best above when compared to everything else you tested, including hydration packs and all that, it was above almost everything but one thing, which was body position. That's how you guys ranked bottle in the back pocket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. From
you did look at hydration packs, right? What did you guys? Because you probably were aware of one. What did you find out about aero and hydration packs?
Yeah. So I think this is another one where it depends is really going to come in. But the caveat I'll give is it was on Dylan Johnson on his bike in his position. Mm-hmm. Really what we saw is that hydration pack kind of filled in the gap behind his helmet and almost gave him like that old school, really long Giro time trial helmet. Just smoothed the airflow all the way down his back. And I think the thought was that he had a 2-liter Usui Outlander Pro on, that if we put a 3 liter on, which we didn't have, because it came up higher, that it might be even better. Excuse me. That was pretty surprising. I thought, okay, it's not going to be that bad. It's a good, like, in my mind, it's a good place to keep water. You can haul a lot more water there than you can on the bike. And to haul that much water or carry that much water, you're going to have to start doing the, like, bottle cages on the side of the fork, or, you know, one of those, like, this frame doesn't have that, but, you know, some of those kind of options that have to just be terrible from an aero perspective. And my thought was, I need to carry that much water, so if I put bottles in some weird place like that, it's going to be a huge penalty, and the hydration pack probably won't be that big of a penalty. And it was a pretty sizable benefit. So I want to say 4 or 5 watts at 40K, something like that.
Wow. Not as good as the bottle in the back pocket, but if you're if you're considering a pack and you don't mind the weight on your back or maybe some of the moisture being trapped against your back, it can help you too, is what it sounds like, if you can assume a good position. Is that what you're telling us?
So actually my thought that one of the things heading into the test was when you're kind of like in an upright position, you know, you're in your hoods, and that you'd almost be like kind of blocking the bag, and that's why it wouldn't be that bad. But then I thought, man, if you get in the aero bars, or if you're really tucked into an aero position, I think that thing's going to come up and it's going to be super visible and you know, visible to the wind and be a penalty. And it got better. So it whatever it was doing, it did more of when he was tucked down into a position. So
I guess
it was.
Well, my problem with hydration packs is the one thought I've had with it, without ever seeing them in the wind tunnel, is that the straps actually across the front would disrupt whatever benefit you might be getting from a skin-tight jersey, right? So and I would hope you would wear a jersey that presses pretty close to your skin, keep it from flapping in the wind. But when you add straps, and with the UCV pack that's got that X thing across the chest, boom, then suddenly you've kind of fouled up some of the good airflow maybe you've created with a good jersey. But it turns out that the back, having that thing on the back, and if you're bent over a little bit, does actually help you. There's actually a net gain or a net loss in wind resistance, as it were. So those results was eye-opening to me too. I thought, wow, that's now we have seen people. In fact, the triathlete did it recently in an Ironman, I think in Texas, and I forget who famously did it in the Tour of France. We have seen athletes shove hydration packs down their fronts because it creates, you know, when we look at area and we look at frontal area, it makes a nicer shape on our front. But I imagine a hydration pack down your front side would not be great for what you're doing.
Not for 200 miles.
Yeah, we actually kind of talked about maybe testing it, and then we abandoned that idea because I thought, all right, let's test something that somebody might actually do. And I think,
what are you going to actually do?
So on the hydration pack, the other bag that we tested was an Osprey Talon 7, I think is the name. It's a 2.5 liter bladder, and we tested that one, in all honesty, because I had them. And it was, you know, we were just kind of grabbing a couple that we had. And so I'm actually going to run that, I think. And my rationale, it was actually a penalty. So it was a couple watts worse than the Usui bag. And on the Marginal Gains podcast, I feel like that's some sort of sin. But kind of my knowing that this thing is slower and I'm going to run it anyway, you know, it was I want to say, like, I just looked at the results. At 40K, it was 4.5 watts savings for the Usui pack in the standard position. And it was 4.5 watt savings, and it was, I think, a 2.5 watt penalty to run the Osprey pack.
Well, I don't know if it's a sin, but I am confused. Why are you choosing that?
So with the caveat that I gave at the beginning of the test, the results were on Dylan, on his position.
Sure.
So I'm not, it's close enough that I don't know that the results would be the same with me, and I don't own two Usui packs already. So, and like I said, there's no sponsors here, so that means I'm going out and buying a couple new Usui packs that I won't have any other use for. So, Yeah, so I think I'm gonna run there until probably Dylan chirps in my ear a bunch of times, and then I end up going buying some new sweet packs.
Well, I mean, that's a calculation we always make with every marginal gain, right? There is a cost, and in physical, actual dollars sometimes. And, it's like, well, is this 1 watt for 200 miles going to, is it worth the $300 I'm going to spend on it? And you get to answer that question for yourself, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think if I was convinced that I would get the same exact results as Dylan, then I think I'd probably spring for it. But I think in the back of my mind, I'd always be going, am I going to buy the new bag and then find out that one's actually worse on me and the Osprey one is better on me? Because it all depends, right?
And one thing Hadi and I have talked about in another show a million times is you gotta race with what you trained with, right? And obviously you have an Osprey pack, you're comfortable with the Osprey pack, you know how it fits for an all-day ride. Do you want to really try for this giant, very challenging race that is going to have you stretched out in aero bars for 10 hours or whatever? Do you want to try that with a different kind of pack? I don't know. For myself, I will say that I love the Usui Outlander. Once again, no sponsors here. I pay retail just like everyone else. But I mean, it's it all comes down to what you like and whatever watts you show in a wind tunnel. Those are all well and good. But if your lower back starts killing you 3 hours in, then it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, and the last thing you want to do too is implement a marginal gain at the expense of some other very important thing like drinking or eating. Like for me, I would go, well, the bottle in the back pocket, that seems like a no-brainer as long as I can keep drinking, right? Or I have enough water, right? Then it doesn't become a marginal gain. It becomes a loss or a detriment, and you don't want to do that. That's why it depends. It really does depend. For any other learnings from the wind tunnel that are takeaways for you that you'll implement?
Yeah, I think the big one is try to figure out how not to put the number plate on facing the wind. As much as you can get that from being a big square in the front, I think it has come at a detriment to me when I go search Travis in the photo records afterwards, and they never see my bib number. But so there's not very many photos of me in those events, but or at least not that I can find. But it was a really massive penalty to have that square on. So the one that we found that was actually the best was what Dylan was doing and taping it from the top, like sideways on the top tube, down tube, right behind the head tube. So we'll see if we can do that. I don't want to upset anybody either. So some people are fine with it, some people aren't, or some race organizers. And then the other one is I had kind of thought about bringing a handlebar bag, the little burrito style bags, and thought, it's definitely a penalty, but there's more snacks there. I can carry what I need. I will absolutely not be bringing that to an event. So, that was the worst thing that we tested in the wind tunnel.
Yeah, until they start shaping those things more like fairings, they're terrible. They're awful. Yeah. And you don't even need to go to a wind tunnel to figure that out. Yeah, it's fine for training. You stuff your jacket in there. You look hip. Go to the coffee shop. Cool. But if you're racing, get rid of that baby.
Yeah.
Guys, I have to eject now, so I'm going to let you go ahead and continue from here.
No problem.
It's been a super big pleasure. Thanks so much, Travis. Hadi.
Yeah, thanks, Betty.
Thanks much. Sorry I had to get out early. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay.
Bye, YouTubers.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'll check and see if he's exited. Okay, so it's just you and me. We'll just close it out, Travis, and we only have a few more minutes left, I think, right now. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, a few more things on Aero socks, I imagine. You're wearing the Silca Aero socks? Yep.
Yeah.
Good guy.
Yep, so we'll have the tall version on for Unbound.
Uh-huh. And I've seen you in a Silca jersey. Tell us the fit on that. Anything special about it?
No, so there's nothing crazy about that. I think one of the things that we found with, we didn't touch on this earlier, but the water bottle in the jersey pocket is, I think, part of the reason that helped so much is it pulled all of the wrinkles that were around like Dylan's midsection, and it pulled that jersey tighter. So that kind of highlighted that really just getting rid of the wrinkles is a really big advantage, especially on the side where the air starts to detach. It just keeps it attached that little bit longer. And that jersey's pretty tight fitting. I don't know. I've found a lot of the skin suits that I own don't have quite as good of a chamois. So I don't know that I would wear one of the ones that I do have. I haven't tested all that many of them, but so I think I'll be in the Silca kit on race day.
Yeah, plus if you want to get rid of a jersey, because who knows what, right? It's hard to do that if you're in a skin suit, so
yeah,
jerseys still work for that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Helmet, how about a helmet choice?
I have a pretty unique situation where there's about 3 brands that make a helmet big enough to fit on my head. So it pretty drastically limits what I can do. But Giro is one of the brands that fits. So I have both the Aether, I think is the name of it, and I should have looked this up before I came on here. It's their
more importantly
helmet.
Right. More importantly, just describe its CDA.
So it's their Aero Road. Yeah, it's their Aero Road helmet. So I think it will be a little bit faster than the little bit more vented Aether. I intentionally bought that helmet in white to try to reflect some sun, because really the only reason I wouldn't wear that is if it was a little bit hotter, and my other helmet is black, so I'm kind of in the black helmet will attract some heat. It might vent a little better. The white helmet will reflect some heat. It might not vent as well. And then the training camp / family vacation I'm going on is going to be in Arizona 2 weeks before in May. So we'll do some heat testing while we're out there.
Sure, and a little heat training to go. That can actually help with fitness, exposure to heat.
Mm-hmm.
Any other Unbound only tweaks that you're going with, bike or otherwise?
Yeah, I think I've never put chain lube in a sag before, but I've never raced 200 miles before. So that one will be new for me. Inserts will be new. I've never run that before. And then I actually might, depending on the temperature on the day, I might put a bottle in my jersey pocket too. So, that might be just as I'll have 2 big bottles in the cages and 2.5 liters in the pack. But it's 80, 90 miles between, and I really don't want to run out of water at some point.
Yeah, no one does, huh? Not out there. Yeah. That becomes a mess. And it goes without saying you'll be running Silca's sealant too, I imagine, too. So that stuff works good.
Yeah.
You did a great tire test, by the way, folks. Travis went out and purposely ran over nails and screws and all kinds of stuff just to give Silca's sealant one last test, and it certainly did a nice job there. So nutrition and calories, we shouldn't forget this. As much as we love to obsess about the equipment you're running and wind tunnels and CDA and CRR and all that stuff, you got to feed yourself, Travis. Have you figured out how much per hour you might be ingesting and what form it might take?
Yeah, so I've never really had much of a preference of nutrition. There's one or two that I don't want to eat that don't seem to agree with me. And then I had kind of started to go down the SIS route of they have beta fuel that's got quite a few calories in the drink mix. And then I actually met Caleb Reese from Flow Nutrition, or Flow Formula, sorry, maybe a year ago at some events, and he and I just had chatted about a bunch of different things, and so all right, well, I'll give these guys a shot, and it's been awesome. So it's a little bit different than the beta fuel stuff that it comes in one packet. The Flow formulas, you can do scoops, which I really like, so I use that in training all the time, where I don't need as many carbs and as many calories per hour. And the flavors are really good. They have ones with caffeine, without, and they even have a flavorless option. Sounds like an ad for Flow, but I'm sure Caleb will like it. But you can kind of tune. I think of it as like tuning the flavor of your drink mix. If it gets a little too sweet, a little too tropical punch, or whatever the flavor is, you can add a flavorless scoop and kind of tone it down a little bit, but still get the same calories and carb mix. So there's a couple different flavors that I like, but I've been going with the raspberry one lately. The 3 scoops per bottle is 90 grams of carbs and 350 or 360 calories. So I'll try to do the equivalent of one of those an hour, plus probably a untapped maple gel, and then maybe even a beta fuel gel, which is another 20 and 40 grams of carbs. So I did a test a little while ago. I did 180 grams of carbs an hour. And
really?
That
180?
was probably a little too much.
Yeah. Wow.
I was okay, but I think after 6 hours of doing that, I don't think I would be okay. So I'll probably aim for like 120 to 150 grams of carbs an hour, which is I think 500 or 600 calories an hour. Probably aiming to burn about 600 to 650 an hour. So should be pretty good. And on the nutrition side, I think my big learning from Mid-South was previously in long events, I've always had a hydration pack full of drink mix and a bottle of regular water and a bottle of half pickle juice and half water, which most people will be repulsed by. I love the flavor of pickle juice, but really it's a palate cleanser when you get tired of all the sugar and you're eating gels or gummy bears and drink mix and all that, and like a quick squirt of pickle juice resets the palate so that you can keep eating that stuff and not bonk out in the middle of nowhere. So I'll do that, and I think the other one is I think I'm going to stash a double oatmeal cream pie at both Sags and the Finish. So I have a good friend that we ride a lot, and that was always our, we'll go do a long ride. We're just going to ride to some gas station far away, get a double oatmeal cream pie, like 500 calories in a little pouch, and ride home.
Ooh. Is that a Midwest thing? Double oatmeal cream pie. We don't see those out here west.
You might have heard of the oatmeal cream pies, but in the Midwest, you got to stack 2 of them on top of each other and put them in the same in the same packet.
Man, you folks do it right in the middle of the country. I swear. That is good stuff. Okay, well, that sounds like that does sound like an aggressive day. I'll just say, as little as I know about nutrition, it's 125 to 150 grams an hour of carbohydrates. If you keep up with that, you will you'll greatly offset the deficit. I mean, we're all going to run deficits, right? In an event like that. There's just no keeping up. You're burning more than you can possibly take in. But that's a good goal to have, nonetheless. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we wish you a lot of luck with this, and we're going to talk to Travis when he gets back about how things went and how his marginal gains played out. Because there's a lot here, and we want to do follow up and figure out what he learned and what we all can learn from his experiment here. Travis, how about a time goal? Do you have one yet? I know there's some time left here before the start line in Emporia, but give us a time goal.
I had Ryan on from Best Bike Split a couple weeks ago now, and been playing around with that quite a bit. It's looking a little bit like 12 hours. I think if the number had a 12 in front of it, I would be pretty excited. So said for a while, I think maybe 12 to 14 hours, which is a pretty big time range, but if I can get towards the lower end of that, I'll be pretty excited. I think 14 is anything longer than that. I think for me, things will have gone pretty poorly, and I'll be in some shambles rolling into town. So we'll say 12 and a half hours. I think that'll be we'll make that my official goal.
Well, we won't hold it to you. Neither will Josh. We hope, at least. And we're going to root for you the whole way. We'll be following you on the socials and so forth. So we look forward to your day in Emporia with thousands of others, and you're well equipped with marginal gains and a lot of knowledge, and should be a good day.
Well, thanks.
Okay, why don't we close the show out here? I'm just going to pause real quick. And again, I'm going to read all this stuff here. It says Hottie and Fatty, and all I need you to do at the end is, everyone, thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with more marginal gains.
All right.
Cool? All right. All right, folks, if you have questions about anything covered in this show, or you want to give Travis words of encouragement, leave a comment on this or any episode at marginalgainspodcast.cc. You can also call or text the Marginal Gains hotline, 317-343-4506. Got a question, comment, or idea for the show? Call or text that number and tell us what's on your mind. As a reminder, this podcast can be found wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You'll find links to other ways to subscribe over at marginalgainspodcast.cc. All right, Travis, take us home.
Everyone, thanks for listening. We'll be back soon with more Marginal Gains.